Hi everybody, I'm Keith and I'm a website hosting happiness engineer. I specialize in WordPress websites and I want to remove the technical stress from people's lives. But the presentation today isn't going to be specific to WordPress websites. It's going to be, hopefully, will relate to any kind of website, and as well as websites, we're going to touch on domains and emails as well. And the point of the presentation is to make you think about things that you might have taken for granted up to now. So, as it said in the introduction, it happens more often than people think. I see so many cases where the person who built the website for a business doesn't answer the phone anymore, doesn't respond to emails. They go and get another job, or they're no longer in the website industry, or it was a friend of a friend, or as a family member who's no longer doing it full time, and the business owner gets a bit stuck, basically. So hopefully the questions I'm going to ask you today, or to think about, are going to make your life easier in the long run. And as the title says, avoid website worries. So we're only going to touch the surface of this in 10 minutes that I've got to make the presentation. So another thing I'm going to do at the end is to make sure that Melanie and Julie have a checklist that you can look at and download and peruse at your leisure, basically. But one thing I would say is it's always easier to go through the questions we're going to look at when you've got time to find out the answers, rather than when things have all gone wrong and your website's gone down and you've lost your emails and you're panicking and you're trying to find the answers to these questions, and it's essential because you need to get everything back online. So if you can do this when you've got time, it's much better than doing it in an emergency situation when you're under pressure and you need to find this information. So the things we're going to look at today, first of all, we'll have a look at domains. So most business owners have a website with a domain. So for example, yourbusiness.co.uk or yourbusiness.com. And the first question I'd ask is, where is the domain registered? Is it with one of the big companies like Namecheap or Godaddy or 123reg or IONOS or FastHosts, or is it with a smaller company? Who's the registered owner of the domain? Lots of business owners, I've seen lots of business owners think it's them, but it might not be. If somebody else built the website for you, sometimes the person who built the website registers the domain to themselves because it's easier and quicker. So business owners don't find out until it's too late that they don't actually own their domain. So who's the registered owner of the domain? And what's the email address for the registered owner? Because the thing you'll find out, hosting companies will only deal with the registered owner of a domain if you need to move to a different hosting company or you have questions for the hosting company. So that's why it's important that the business owner is the registered owner of their domain if things have to be moved or questions come up about the domain. So do you have access to the hosting account where the domain is registered? Does anybody else have access to that account where the domain is registered? Do you own any other similar domains? So if your main business domain is .co.uk or .com version of the domain, do you own the .org or the .net version of the domain? Should that be included in discussions about domains that you own, or do you have something completely unrelated to the business? Dan, for example, might own Iron Dragon Design, but then he might have graphic design in Dorset.co.uk, for example. So do you have domains that you could use for your business but aren't directly related to the business name? And when does the registration for each of your domains expire? Do you know when it's going to expire? And is it set to, most domains, you can set them to auto-renew. So when the expiration date comes around, they automatically get renewed, which obviously solves any problems, because if the domain expires and it isn't auto-renewed, your website's going to disappear and your emails are going to stop working because the domain will be suspended. So if auto-renew is enabled, hopefully, you've then got to make sure that your credit card or debit card on your account is active, because if the card's out of date, then auto-renew won't trigger. And again, you're going to end up in a world of hurt trying to get your website and your emails back. So make sure that you know when they expire, that auto renew is configured, and that your payment card is up to date on that account. So that's domains. So if we come to websites, first question I always ask people about the websites is, how was your website created? Was it using WordPress, or was it using another platform like Wix or Squarespace or Shopify, or is it a custom build that a developer built for you? So what platform is your website on? Who built the website? And is the person who built the website, if it wasn't you, are they still involved? Do they maintain the site for you? If it is a WordPress website, are the plugins and themes and WordPress, is everything, are updates run when they're due? Because not keeping them updated is the most common, or one of the most common reasons for websites getting hacked. So make sure if it is a WordPress website that all the updates are run on a regular basis. And on a similar note, is your website backed up regularly? Do you have a backup of your website? Because I've seen cases where hosting company servers went up in smoke, and all the websites on those servers disappeared. And the follow-up to, is your website backed up regularly, would be, have you ever tested restoring the backup? Do you know that the backup process works? Because it's much easier to test that when you've got time and a bit of convenience, rather than when you've lost everything and you're keeping your fingers crossed that the backup worked, but you're not sure because you've never tested it. So is your website backed up, and have you tested restoring the backup at any point? So another question that's going to come up when it comes to websites, if you need to move the website to a different hosting company, or you need to get a new developer involved, they're going to ask you, do you have access to the back end of your website? Do you have a username? Do you have a password? Do you know how to access the website to make changes to it? If it's a WordPress website, what level of authorization do you have? Because you might just have editor authorization, which means you can change the content, but you can't create a user for somebody else, for example. That requires admin level authorizations. So do you have access to your website? And if you do, what level of authorization do you have? Because these are questions that if you ever need another developer to get involved, or somebody to help you with your website, they're going to ask. And also just who else has access to your website? It might be support person in the past, or somebody who has helped you in the past but is no longer involved. So do they still need access to your website? So sometimes it's good to look through all the people who have access to your website and see if they still need access, because if they don't still need access to it, you could revoke their access and just make sure that only the people who need it now have access to your website. One really important question with everybody who has access to your website is, are they using strong and unique passwords? Or are they using password 123, for example? Because again, that's another reason for websites getting hacked, is people using easy to remember passwords. Because when hackers try and get into your website, these are the passwords that they will try and use. They will guess, basically. They'll brute force, it's called brute force attack. They'll try and lots of different passwords on your website to see if they can get in. So make sure that you're using strong, unique passwords. And that means hopefully at least 16 characters, a combination of uppercase, lowercase, numbers, symbols. And then it's much harder for the hackers to get into the website if all the users there are using strong and unique passwords. If you have staff, what happens when a staff member joins your company? Who creates the user? Do they need a user in the website? Who creates the user? Is there a naming convention? Do you use their email address? Do you use their first name, their last name? Do you have naming conventions for website users? And equally, if somebody leaves, if a member of staff leaves the company, do you have an offboarding process? Does their access get revoked? What happens to all the content they've created? Do you have processes in place for all these things, or is it just done when it needs to be done? We'll manage it, but it might be different every time. So sometimes all this stuff needs processes in place, and then you can be sure everything's done consistently and done well and nothing's forgotten. And couple of things that you might need for your website. Do you need a cookie consent banner? Does your website use cookies? Do you need one of those pop-ups that appears first time somebody goes to the website? Because if you don't, and your website is using cookies, there's various reasons that your website might be using cookies. Anything from analytics, so visitor tracking, to functions that are used on the website. But there's various scanners out there that you can use to see if your website is using cookies. And if it is, you need to make sure that you've got a cookie consent banner in place to make sure that you're asking visitors the right questions to avoid any issues. And on a related note, do you have a privacy policy? Do you have a contact form? Are you collecting data in any shape or form? If you are, you need to make sure you've got an up-to-date privacy policy. And if your business is a limited company, are the company registration and the registered address included on the website? Because that one's actually a legal requirement. If your company, or if your business is a registered company, you need to have certain details on the website visible to visitors. Otherwise, you can get into trouble because they'll say that one really is a legal requirement. So that's the website questions. And the last thing we're going to look at today briefly is emails. So you probably all know what's the business email address. But sometimes the follow-up question would be, how are your business emails handled? So is it webmail? Or it might be systems that you've heard of called Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace. They're called hosted email systems, and they're more robust and they're more often used for business purposes. So do you know what platform is used to handle your business emails? Do you know how many business email addresses you've got? You might have some accounts set up, you might have some forwarders in place. So they're not necessarily in email accounts in their own right, but you might have info at, or hello at, or sales at, or accounts at, various options for email accounts that are forwarded on to your main email address. So they're sent to a different email address and they arrive in your inbox. So have you got a list of all the email addresses which are used within your business? And the most important question, which often catches people out because everything's set up on their phone or on their computer and they haven't had to change it for years. Do you know the password for your email account? If you had to get in on a new device, do you know how to get in? Is the password stored anywhere? Do you know what the password is? Because that's a question that may come up. And it's good to just have a note of it somewhere. So however many business email accounts you've got, do you know what the passwords for them are? And as a side note, there's a website called haveibeenpwned.com, which shows you can type your email address in. I'll include this in the checklist afterwards. But it's a free service. You type your email address in and it tells you if your email address has ever been part of a data breach from a big company. In the past, Google have had, LinkedIn have had, lots of companies have had data breaches. Sometimes you find out about them, sometimes you don't. But you can find out if your email address has ever been part of a data breach. And obviously if it is, then you need to change your password, because that's when hackers get hold of email and password combinations from a company, from a business like LinkedIn, and they will then go to Amazon or Etsy or any of the big, eBay. They'll go to the big website service providers and they'll try the same email address and password combination, because lots of people unfortunately still use the same password for lots of different services. So it's a good idea to be on top of data breaches and change your password if necessary, to save you having issues with other websites where you use the same email address and password combination. So getting towards the end of the list, a couple more questions, a bit like the website user question from before. If you ever need a new email address for your company or for a new employee, who would set it up? How would it be set up? Is there a naming convention? Do you have processes in place like for website users? Do you have the same, if somebody, a contractor or an employee within your business, if they need an email address, is there a process in place so things happen consistently? And the last one, you might have heard acronyms like SPF and DKIM and DMARC. email verification is getting more important these days. So emails are delivered to the recipients' inboxes and not straight into spam. And the email companies are getting hotter on checking, basically, that emails really do come from where they say they come from. And to make sure that it's as likely as possible that your emails arrive in the recipient's inbox and don't get put into spam, you have to set up settings like SPF, DMARC, and DKIM. They're DNS records that sit there in the background. It only has to be done once, but it needs to be done, like I say, to ensure that the emails that you send out are more likely to arrive in their recipient's inbox and not get lost on the way. So have you set up the email verification methods to ensure, hopefully ensure success for your emails arriving where you want them to arrive? So SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, they're called. So as I say, we can only just touch the surface of these topics in the time we've got available this morning. I'll make sure there's a checklist for everybody to download if they want to take a bit more time looking through the list and making note of usernames, email addresses, passwords, and just storing it in a safe place so you've got it when you need it. But yes, hopefully I want, like I said in the introduction, I want to remove the technical stress from people's lives, and part of that is making sure that they have the information, they're aware of the information they need to know if the questions ever arise. So at a breakneck speed, that was domains, websites, and emails, questions to be aware of, information to make a note of in case you ever need it. So hopefully I haven't made everybody's brains explode, giving you something to think about. And are there any questions?
I have one that always niggles at me, and it has to do with websites as well as email addresses, which is a side issue, and social media accounts as well. When you die, do you need to put in your will that your executor needs to close down your website, or do you need to will your website, your business, your website to somebody specific?
I think I've never looked into it in detail, but I think there are services where you can sort of say what you want to happen. Because obviously part of the issue, if you haven't put anything in place, the social media companies are very hot on not allowing anybody else access to your accounts, basically. So I think if you have something in place where the people left behind can go to the social media companies or the website companies and say, this person is no longer here, but we need access to their accounts. Yes, there are services out there, because obviously as time goes on, it's becoming more of an issue and it happens more and more often. So it's probably something I need to look into in more detail. So I don't know in detail the answer, but I know there are services out there where it's like a digital will almost. You can say what you want to happen to your account.
I know Google has a service where if you are inactive for 3 months, they literally close you down.
Yeah.
They close you down.
Yeah, I know, for example, I use a password manager service. So it sort of manages all my passwords, because I have quite a lot of passwords, obviously, with all the stuff that I do and all the client accounts that I manage. And I can set up what's called emergency access to that. And I can tell somebody they have emergency access, and they can request at any time, they can request emergency access to get access to all my passwords. And I then have 24 hours basically to say yes or no. And if I say no, that person can't have access, then obviously the request is cancelled. But if after 24 hours I haven't responded and I haven't taken any action, that person gets access to all my passwords basically, and can then go in and do whatever is necessary with they have all the passwords they need basically to access my accounts. So emergency access to password managers would be another way of handling a situation like that. And obviously somebody you trust, give them emergency access to your accounts. And then if the worst happens, they can then get access to all your accounts without sort of telling them all the passwords here and now. They only get it when they need it.
I suppose a website is linked to a business, and you would have that in your will anyway. But I do find it very disconcerting when I'm reminded every year of friends' birthdays when I know they're dead. And I've nearly been caught out when I've wished somebody nearly wished somebody a happy birthday, and then thought, oh my God, what am I doing? They died 5 years ago. Those accounts just seem to stay up like on Facebook. It's quite disconcerting.
Facebook definitely does have a protocol where you can take over somebody's account, if your family or whatever, because I've done that for my mum. I can't remember what it's called now, but you can set it up in your thingy or the other person's thingy, and it's called something specific, and you can certainly do that. But if somebody hasn't done that, I guess it just stays there. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, because if the social media companies aren't going to go chase, if nobody tells the company basically what's happened, the account will just sort of sit there untouched. Yeah, that was a cheerful question. Thanks,
I
Julie.
know, but it's been niggling me. What
No, no,
happens
no,
when I
absolutely.
die?
It's people don't like thinking about it and talking about this stuff, but absolutely, it's something you need to bear in mind, especially with all of us have so many accounts these days in different places, and yeah, it's definitely something that should be at least discussed more openly, and solutions should be more widely known, I think, because yeah, they aren't at the minute.
I must say, I'm more comfortable with having a website host who I personally know and who gives personal service as opposed to these huge big companies and you're just a number to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I realise I'm biased in this case, but yeah, absolutely. When I'm talking to potential clients, I say, if you need something, if you get in touch, you'll get me. Basically, you'll if you email or call, you will get me. As opposed to with the big companies, you'll call a call center, and it's a bit like potluck. You may get somebody who knows what they're doing. You may get somebody that's their first day on the job, and they're reading from a script. They don't really know the answer, but in any case, you're going to have to start again from scratch, or you're likely to have to start again explaining the whole story and what's happened so far, because they won't be up to speed with it. Whereas if you deal with me, I'll know what's happened so far. You won't have to explain everything straight away, and we'll get it sorted out. So yes, I realize I'm biased in this, but it is something to, if you want to make your life easier and spend less time starting again from the beginning each time you talk to somebody. Yeah, absolutely. It's something to be considered when you're choosing somebody to help you with the technical stuff.
Yeah, it's a real pain to get your website away from those big companies.
Yeah.
It's a huge pain because they keep saying, "Are you sure? Are you sure you want to go? Are you sure?" And they hold on to you.
Mm.
And then one of the websites I was trying to get away from a big company to somebody I personally knew. They started sending me invoices. Oh, you still owe us this. Oh, you still owe us that. Oh, you still owe us this. And we're not letting that go until you pay that. And I spent days on the phone saying, "What on earth are you doing? Why are you invoicing me stuff? What is it for?" And it was a huge rigmarole. So from now on, if I start another website, I will go to somebody I know personally who does this.
Absolutely. There's 2 points to that. The first part is that was my question about, do you have access to the back end of your website in the present? Because I've seen so many cases where business owners don't have access to the back end of the website because the company who built it or who manage it for them won't give them access to the back end of the website. They won't tell them the password. They won't give them a user. And then if you don't have that access, it's very difficult to move away because you don't have access to the settings you need to change them. And I've seen so many cases like that. It's just very frustrating. So hence my question, do you have access to the back end of your website? Do you have admin access to the back end of your website? And the second part about invoices, I absolutely agree too. So many times I've moved people away from the big companies and taken over their hosting, but the big companies still send them invoices for the services they're no longer providing. And I suspect that the big hosting companies are doing that because in lots of cases, they'll send out an invoice and it will just get passed to accounts. Certainly with bigger companies, I imagine nobody will check to see, we receive. It's less so with smaller businesses because the business owner knows we've moved away, we're not using them anymore. But in bigger companies, nobody checks. The invoice just gets sent to accounts and paid. And the big hosting companies must be making a lot of money from invoices they just send out, and they get paid automatically, even though they're not providing the services anymore. And some people won't do what you do and phone them up and question it. They will just automatically pay it, and they're making money from doing absolutely nothing. And it's very frustrating.
Sorry, I've been dominating the questions. Does anybody else have a question for Keith?
Yeah, Keith. So when you were talking about like emails and SPF and, I'm thinking of sun cream, but I know it's not. Do you sort all that out? So if I get, because I've got a WordPress website that's being hosted by not a massive company, but I do want to move it over to you. I can't remember when it's due for renewal. I think it's at the end of the year. I don't know when it is, but I need to check it out. But can you check? I know that I've got back end access and all the rest of that. There's lots of things that I should be doing that I'm not doing, that I'm quite happy to hand over to you, quite frankly. Can you check like DNS thingy,
Yes.
SPF thingies? Because I haven't really got a clue what you're talking about.
Yes, because they have to be publicly available settings, so the email companies can check them when emails are going backwards and forwards. So yes, it is possible to check whether the settings are in place. So yes, absolutely, it can be checked.
To stop people being able to steal my photos, who would I ask to do that? The host of my website?
The only thing you could do is put watermarks. So if you put a watermark on the image, then anybody who steals the image or screenshots the image, they'll either have the watermark or they'll have to do extra work to remove the watermark. So once an image is on a website, there's no way to stop somebody, like I say, they could just take a screenshot of if the image is on the website, you can just take a screenshot of the website and use the image. There's no way to stop it. A watermark will make it more difficult, because even if they screenshot it, the watermark is still like, your company name in sort of faint letters or something across the image. So there's no way to stop it, but you can make it more difficult for people.
Very much. That's really useful to know.
Doesn't really work anymore, watermarks, Keith, because you just put it through AI and ask AI to remove the watermark.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well. Yes, it's putting obstacles in their way. It's not a perfect solution.
But you can still prove, like if Jenny's got like a watermark on her pictures that is like a copyright symbol, Jenny Tobin Flowers, blah blah, and obviously things will be date stamped when they're put up onto her website or whatever. She can prove that actually this is my image and they've used AI. It can be proven that someone's used AI to do something. But your host probably can do things like disable the right click or whatever. Like some websites you can click on and just drag the image off and nick them, but some websites are locked down, and that will put some people off at source. So that your host person will probably be able to do that, but I would definitely recommend doing that and maybe putting a watermark on.
It's putting obstacles in their way. There's no perfect solution for stopping it, because once an image is on a website, somebody can make it. There's ways to make a copy of it. Yep.
Thank you, Keith, and thank you, Melanie. Very grateful.
If you've got more questions, or you don't understand anything I said didn't make sense, or you want to have a follow-up chat in more detail, obviously let me know and we'll spend a bit more time looking through, because we've just touched the surface of all these questions this morning. But I'm happy to have a chat with anybody who needs it, who'd like to spend a bit more time looking through these things to help it make sense.